Alright, so we're back here for our last and final video for Unit 1. So this is Lesson 1.11, and we're still working with quadratic equations in factored form. Our learning objective for today, students will write quadratic equations in factored form when this time our a value is going to be greater than 1. Alright, so like we always do, let's start out with a little warm-up. So yesterday we went through how to factor quadratic equations written in standard form and how to write them in factored form. So what I want you to do, I just want you to pause the video for one quick second, and I want you to try to work through these and answer the questions based off of the quadratic equation that's given here. Okay, the first question says write the equation in factored form. So you're going to write that equation from standard form to factored form here. And then it says once you get it in factored form, what are the two factors of the quadratic equation written in factored form? So once you factor it out, you're going to tell me what the two factors are. And then the last question says what are the zeros of the quadratic equation? Okay, so then you're going to write that here. Alright, so make sure you pause the video and go ahead and take care of that, and then just come back and see and check your answers against mine. Alright, so to write the equation, this particular equation in factored form, you should have gotten y is equal to x plus 3 times x minus 5. And of course, because this is factored form, our two factors would be x plus 3 and x minus 5. What are the zeros? So since I know what my factors are and it's in factor form, I can easily identify that my zeros are -3 and +5 just from the equation written in factor form. And just in case if you guys forgot, remember it says find the zeros, so basically it was talking about the x-intercepts, which also means solutions and roots. Alright, so just a little warm up from what we did yesterday in writing quadratic equations from standard form to factored form. So now let's move on with today's lesson. So starting here today, our objective is to write equations from standard form to factored form, but this time if you remember, the a value is going to be greater than 1. So now we're going to have a number in front of that a value. Well, let's see what it's going to look like. Alright, so here's one example here. Alright, and as you can see, we start out with y equals 5x squared plus 11 plus 11x plus 2. And automatically you notice that, look, my a value is no longer 1 because there's a number in front of this x squared term. So now we have to think a little bit differently about how we're going to write this in factor form. But we're still going to perform basically the same operations. Alright, but in order to do this, we first need to pull out our graphing calculator that we had working with yesterday to make these a little bit more simpler. Alright, so now that we have the graphing calculator pulled out, so let's get started. So the first thing we did, which is just kind of help us, we just made sure that we drew the x there. Okay. And then we need to make sure that we're still multiplying a times c, and we're looking for factors of a times c that's going to add together to give us our b term. Nothing has changed about that. So the same thing that we did yesterday, we're going to continue on with that same process today. Alright, so when I look here and I multiply my a times my c, this time my a is 5 and my c is 2. So when I multiply 5 times 2, I should get a 10 there. Now, here, the value that these factors should add up to should be 11. So I'm going to put a positive 11 down here. Now, we have to use our calculator to help us out at this point. So we're going to do the same thing that we did yesterday. I'm going to go to y equals, and I'm looking for factors of 10 that when I add them together, they give me 11. So I'm going to put 10 here divided by x like we did yesterday. And I'm going to just hit second graph here, and then there's your table. But remember, we have to, these are my factors here, and remember we exclude the decimal numbers, so we're not looking for the decimal numbers. But I want to bring in this third column to show that these factors are added together, so it makes my life a lot easier. So I'm going to go here, back to y equals, and this time I want to take my x, and I'm going to add that to my y1. So I go to vars, tab over to y vars, hit function, and then I'm going to hit enter for y1. And so this is the equation that I want in y2. Then I'm going to go to second graph again, and now my table is displayed. So basically I see that there's an 11 here for my b term. So over here in this column here, I need to look for where there's an 11 at. So I'm strolling down, and don't forget that you can tab up here, and you can also tab down as well. But we're looking for a positive 11. And so as I'm tabbing down, let's see, tab down, tab down, tab down, tab down. Oh, I see it. I found it. I was able to find 11 here, which this is a positive 11 and this is a positive 11. So automatically I can see that my two factors would be 1 and 10. So I'm going to put 1 there and 10 there. Alright, so perfect. I used my calculator and I found my two factors. Now, because this time we can't just write our factors from here, it's a little bit more complicated because this a value is not 1. So to get our factors, what we want to do, because this a value in this case is 5, we're going to divide both of those factors by 5. Okay, both of the factors that we found, we're going to divide them by 5 because this is 5. So if this was 3, I would divide it by 3. If it was 6, I would divide it by 6. Okay, so I divide both of these by 5. Now, here, when you divide by 5, so basically you have 10 divided by 5. Well, if I divide 10 divided by 5, and I can go back to my calculator, if I'm not really sure, I can put this in my calculator just to be on the safe side. Okay, so I'm going to put 10 divided by 5, and that's going to give me 2. Okay, and then also I'm going to do this so that you guys can see. I'm going to do 1 divided by 5, and I get this decimal number here. Okay, remember we said that decimal numbers, we don't like them to be in there inside the factors, so we're not going to use decimal numbers. So what we're going to do is we can write this point. Because this simplifies to just 2, one of my factors would be just x plus 2 because this simplifies to 2. Okay, so this is just x plus 2 for this factor. Now this factor over here, on the other hand, what we're going to do is this 5 that's in the denominator is going to just be in front of the x in that second factor. And then I'm going to add plus 1 because this number up top or in the numerator is a positive 1. So I just add it together. And there you have your factors, or you have this equation written in now factored form. Now, when we're talking about our x-intercepts, it's a little bit different, okay? Also, if you notice here, the x-intercept is not going to really change as much because that's still x plus 2. So our x-intercepts would be -2 because this is a -2 here. But because this is just x, it's just 1x. But because this is a 5x, our x-intercept is really whatever this value is. Okay, so we just take this number and we divide it by this number. So basically, it is really this number. Our x-intercepts is whatever this number is. Our x-intercepts is whatever this number is. But it's just going to be the opposite. So as you can see, or if you remember that this was just 2, so my x-intercept would be -2, which is shown here. And this is 1/5. Which we don't want to really write it as a decimal, but we could. So this would be just -1/5. And then Also from here, if you'll notice here, you still can get the 1/5 here. You just have to remember that when I put this 1/5 inside this factor, I moved the bottom number in front of the x, and I moved the other number beside the, and I added the other number there, if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Let's. I also can write this as -2 and -0.2. And when I'm saying I can write this, we're referring to our x-intercepts. So the reason I can do this is because, as we just witnessed, 1/5 is the same as 0.02. And how do I know that? Well, I can just go into my calculator and put -1 divided by 5, and I get this. Okay, they're equivalent. They mean the same exact thing. It's just one is written as a fraction and the other one is not. Okay, but you don't have to worry about that because your calculator does all of that cool stuff for you. All right, let's look at another example here. All right, so now let's look at y equals 3x squared plus 4x minus 15. All right, same thing here. We got to start with our x. We're going to multiply a times c, and we're going to add, needs to add together to give us b. So when I multiply a times c, which is 3 times -15, I get -45. Please make sure that you use your signs and you multiply your signs correctly. So when I get this -45, I now have to find factors of -45 that will add to a +4. Because my b term is 4. So how do I do that? Same thing. You go to your calculator, and as we did yesterday, instead of me writing all this out again, I'm just going to take my 10 away. So I deleted my 10, and I'm going to put a 4 in there instead. So I'm going to put 4 divided by x inside there, and boom, I'm done. Okay, I don't have to go through all that stuff because we've already went through that yesterday. Okay, so this is the basic stuff that we did yesterday. And I look at my table, and this time I'm looking for 4 in my column that's adding everything together. And immediately I recognize 4 is there. And so my two factors would be +2 and +2. So I go here, and I have a 5 there. So that's not supposed to be a 5. Alright, so some of you guys probably realized my mistake. I was putting in 4, but I was supposed to actually put in -45, and I'm dividing that by x. Okay, so I put the wrong numbers in the first time, and I'm going to hit second and graph. And so this time I'm going to look for 4. And so my two factors that I should write there should be -5. Okay, is 1 and also 9, as we have here, -5 and 9. So I'm going to put -5 as one of my factors and 9 as another of my factors. And because this time, remember, a is not 1, I can't just go and write my factors. So I have to include this 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each one of these factors by 3 because that is the a value. All right, and so that's what we just did here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to now try to simplify this. I can see that 9 divided by 3, I just automatically knows that that's not a fraction. So in my calculator, if I'm not sure, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to try it. So 9 divided by 3, that's equal to 3. Okay, and then I'm going to put -5 divided by 3. That's equal to a decimal number. Okay, so since this is equal to a decimal number, I'll just leave it written as it is. But here, 9 is a whole number, so I'll change that. So my factors would look like y equals 3x minus 5 and x plus 3, where this x plus 3 comes from this right here, because 9 divided by 3 gives us just this 3. But this right here, because I'm going to leave it written as a fraction, this 3 goes in front of this bottom number, goes in front of the x, and then -5 comes from this top number that's left over. All right, so now when we talk about our x-intercepts, I can very easily derive the x-intercept from this because there is no number in front of x. So I know that my x-intercept is -3. But on this one, the x-intercept, not so easy. Okay, so I have to remember that this 3 has to go back under that 5. Okay, this 3 goes back under that 5, and it is -5/3. Or if I want to write it or show it as a decimal number, I could just say my x-intercept is -3 and -1.667 if I round it. And as you can see, when we divided this, we got -1.667 in our calculator. All right, so let's move on. All right, another example here. I'm going to try to do as many examples as I possibly can just to give you guys something to look at. So here we are again. Same thing. We go ahead and draw our x to help us. All right, we multiply our a times c. In this case, our a and c is 2. Our a is 2 and our c is -7. And we have to add that together to get our b. In this case, our b is -13. Sorry. All right, so when we multiply a and c together, which is 2 times -7, it's going to give us a -14 here. All right, and that has to add together to give us -13. All right, so we go to our calculator to use our calculator as a tool to help us processing because it's a lot. And so up here, notice that you still have your x plus y1 still there. Just leave it there because it's going to save you time. Don't do anything like that. So I'm going to put -14 divided by x in my calculator. Then I'm going to go to second. Once my table pulls up, I know that in my here, I'm looking for a number that says -13. And immediately I spot that number. I see that, oh, -13 is here. So that means 1 and -14 are my numbers. So I'm going to place my 1 here and my -14 here. It doesn't matter the order, okay? So then I know because a is not 1, okay? There's a number in front of a. There's a number there in front of the x squared. I have to divide both of those factors by that number. Okay, so I'm going to divide them both by that number. Now I can write my factors. So one of my factors would be x minus 7 because 14 or -14 divided by 2 just gives us a -7. Again, you guys can put this into your calculator just to see. All right, then you have 1 divided by 2. Well, 1 divided by 2 is going to give you a fraction. Let me show you. So over here, I go back to my calculator. I'm going to put in -14 divided by 2. Okay, and I get -7. And then I'm going to put 1 divided by 2. And I get 0.5. Okay, so I can't use to write it as a factor, so I have to leave this as a fraction. But I can change this because this is actually a whole number. So that's where the 7 came from. So instead of writing -14/2, I can just write 7. This simplifies to just 7 or -7. So that's why I get x minus 7 for one of my factors. And for in this case, again, the bottom number is going to be in front of your variable, which is x, and the top number is going to be tagging along at the end. So since this is +1, this will be +1. So here, reading my x-intercepts, I can clearly see that one of my x-intercepts crosses at +7 because this is -7. And then my other x-intercept, because it is written like this, I'm just going to automatically move this under the bottom. Okay, move this under the bottom, or you can look at the top where you have your where you have everything worked out here and automatically know that this is one of your factors. But you just move this, and this is -1/2. Or I can rewrite it as a decimal, and they all mean the same thing. So this is a +7 and a -0.5. Okay, these are the same exact thing. One is just written as a decimal, and the other one is just written as a fraction. All right, let's continue. All right, so now we have this example here, and same thing. We're going to start off with our x, then we got to multiply our a times c. Here, our a times c is 2 times -24. That's going to give us a -48. we're trying to add these factors together to give us a negative 13. So now we go to our y equals, okay, and we're going to leave this x plus y1 in there so we're saving time. And I'm going to just clear out the first one. And then I'm going to put negative 48 divided by x. Okay. Then I'm going to go second graph. All right. And now I'm looking for negative 13. So I don't see negative 13 in here easily. And that's okay. So I'm going to stroll up. Okay. I just happened to stroll up. And I found negative 13 very easy. So I see my two factors need to be 3 and negative 16. So I'm going to put 3 and negative 16 there. Now, because again, a is not 1, I have to divide both of these numbers by 2. Okay, because that's my a. So I'm going to divide both numbers by 2. When I divide both numbers by 2, and to get out of here, all you have to do is hit second and mode. And it takes you back to your original screen here where you can do like any addition or subtraction or anything like that, multiplication, division with numbers. Okay, so now I see where I can write my factors very easily. But I'm going to try to divide these to see if I can get a whole number, because if I get a whole number, it just makes life a lot easier. So negative 16 divided by 2 is going to give me negative 8. Wow, I got a whole number. And 3 divided by 2, that's not going to give me a whole number. That's definitely a decimal. So that means I have to leave this written as a fraction. But I can change this into a whole number. So that way, or therefore, I get x equals, or y equals x minus 8. Okay, because this negative 16 divided by 2 is just negative 8. So this minus 8, and then here again we take our bottom number of the fraction and it goes in front of our variable, and then whatever this number is, since it's positive, it just becomes plus 3. And those are our two factors. Now again, we're talking about the x-intercepts. Very clearly I can identify that this x-intercept would be a positive 8. Okay, so this is a positive 8. But here, because there's a number in front of x, I have to write this x-intercept as a fraction. So when I write this as a fraction, remember that 2 goes back under that 3. And so this x-intercept would actually be negative 3 over 2. Okay, that actually should be negative. Okay, so I had to go back and change it, which is okay. So you can see where that should be negative 3 over 2 because this is positive here. So we got to do the opposite. But if I want to rewrite this as a decimal, I could. So I can see that this right here should be positive 8 still. And this should be negative 1.5, which is written as a decimal. Alright, so hope you guys are getting the hang of this now, and hopefully it's becoming a lot more easier. Now we're going to kind of end this with a more complicated one. Okay, here we got y equals 18x squared minus 33x plus 12. Still same thing. We're going to start with our x box, and we're going to multiply a times c. That needs to add to b. So here, when we multiply a times c together, we get 216. All right, and that has to add together. We got to find factors of that. That's going to add together to give us negative 33. Okay, so we're going to go to our calculator into our y equals. We can clear out the first one, but leave the second one in there. It saves you time. So we're going to put 216, and that's going to be divided by x. Okay, divided by x. Then we're going to go to second graph so we can look at our table. Now we're looking for a negative 33. And very quickly, I don't know how this happened, but very quickly my negative 33 popped up here. So I can see that my two factors would be negative 24 as well. Okay, so negative 9 and negative 24. Again, I have to take this value here and I have to divide that by both of these factors. So I'm going to divide the negative 9 by 18, and I'm also going to divide the negative 24 by 18. All right, so now I need to simplify them. So I'm going to hit on my calculator so I can get some help. I'm going to hit second quit. Okay. let's hit second quit. I'm going to clear all this stuff off. I just hit clear, so it clears my calculator because I want some clean space because I want you guys to be able to see this. Now, I'm going to put negative 24 divided by 18 in my calculator. And I get this decimal number right here, which is okay. So I see that's the decimal number, but I have to write this as a fraction. And this fraction right here is not simplified. Okay, so to simplify this, and you're very carefully because this is how you simplify fractions in your calculator. So you go to math, you hit your math key, and now you see where it says frac. Okay, you're going to select that. So when I say select, you're going to hit enter. And it's asking you, do you want to change this decimal right here into a fraction? And yes, we do. So we're going to hit enter again. And so look, it simplified that fraction for us and we didn't have to do it. So it got negative 4/3. So now I'm curious about the other one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative 9 and I'm going to divide that by 18 as well. And I'm going to hit enter. And of course that is a fraction. And if we wanted to simplify that, you guys might know how to simplify that just automatically. And if you said 1/2 or negative 1/2, then you were correct. Okay, so we got our two fractions now that are simplified. So I come over here and I write the simplified version of this fraction here, which is negative 4/3. And then the simplified version for this fraction here would be negative 1/2. So as I can see, they're both fractions. They're not whole numbers. So that means, what will my factors look like? That's right. You're going to have a number in front of both of these variables. So there's a number here. So this is 3x minus 4, which represents this fraction here. Remember, the 3 or the bottom number goes in front of the variable. And then the top number, it just tags on. Since this is negative 4, this is minus 4. All right, then you have your second fraction that you have to deal with, which is negative 1/2. So this bottom number again goes in front of the variable, and this top number just tags along. Since this is negative 1, it becomes minus 1. Now to determine your x-intercepts, you just write the opposite sign. So actually this should be, you know, I just had to make another mistake again, but actually these numbers should be positive because the sign that's in between here, they're negative. So that means they have to be the opposite. Okay, so I messed up a little bit again. And then that also means that let me just make this smaller so that we can all see. So that means that I can write these as decimals also, okay? And the decimals will look like that, just in case if you guys see any decimals answers that are given in like a multiple choice question. Okay, so that is it for today. You guys will have some problems that you're going to try on your own just to kind of give you some practice with this. Remember, you can always go back and watch this video. You can pause it wherever you like. So please make sure that you do that to make sure that you understand, to help prepare yourself. All right, and I will see you guys tomorrow.